Good day, everyone. I hope you're enjoying your day wherever you are. It's a gorgeous, very cold, snowy morning here in Western North Carolina. As you can see, I got snow on me as I walked here to the barn to make this recording. Absolutely gorgeous. So today I want to talk with you about love. And the reason I want to talk with you about that is because it came up in group recently, and we had a very interesting conversation about love and what love is. And there was also some interesting things for me on a process level that I wanted to share. So we started with group. These are the groups we're doing on Thursday and Sunday evenings at 7 Eastern. If you want to participate, send me an email. There's information on the website, www.theoneopendoor.org. I'd love to see you there if you want to participate. Anyway, somebody started off the conversation in group with the question, what is love? And it was an interesting thing for me to have that question raised, and has been interesting still as I've been looking at it, because in the way that I was trained primarily, as I was saying the other day in a video, in the negative way. And if you haven't, that video was called, I think it was called The Negative Way and the Direct Path, something like that. If you haven't seen that one, you might consider checking that out first before you listen to this one, because I think what I'm about to say will make more sense, but up to you. I'm not going to try to explain all that again now, because I just explained that in another video. At any rate, in the negative way, which is the way primarily I feel like in which I was trained, that kind of question was not admissible. It was not permitted even, kind of. Because that was seen as an intellectual question. That's a head question that can only lead to an intellectual answer, and that's not what we're doing. In the way I was trained, that's not what we were doing. What we're doing is we're looking at pure experience. We get into trouble when we look at life and we form ideas and concepts and thoughts about life and end up relating to our ideas and concepts instead of to life itself, right? And what practice is, especially Zen practice particularly, but really all of Buddhist practice, it seems to me, what we're trying to do is get past all of that, get past this artificial veneer that gets put between us and life as it's unfolding, past all those ideas and concepts into direct relationship with life and our experience. That you might say that's kind of what this is all about in some ways. And so I think if I had received that question at the monastery, what would have come up for me is, well, that's going to take us in the wrong direction. That's going to take us into the world of thoughts and ideas and concepts away from direct experience, and that's not where we want to go. So I likely would have responded with something, a process level question, a negative way kind of response, which would be something like, well, who wants to know? Where's that coming from in you? What do you feel like you'll get if you have an answer to that question? That kind of thing. And that's legitimate. That's legitimate. But I'm realizing, and this is an edge in my practice, and has been since I left the monastery a little over 6 years ago now, 6.5 I guess it's been. That's been an edge for me in my practice, is to see, well, is there another way? Is there, as I was saying in the video the other day, is there a direct path that we can follow? Is it possible to look at things positively, not just negatively and stuff? So that was really interesting for me to have that question raised, because I had the opportunity to respond in a different way than my training, I think, would have had me respond. And what I've realized is that a question like that, it doesn't have to be heady. It doesn't have to be intellectual. It can be like the question can guide a form of inquiry. Another example, and this was something that's talked about a lot at the monastery, my teacher talked about this a lot, that the central question of Zen is, who am I? So that, on the surface, that looks like another intellectual sort of a question, because I'm going to try to answer that with ideas and concepts. But it doesn't have to be, and that's how the Roshi talked about it, is that question can guide us deeper and deeper into our experience. If we try to answer that question intellectually, it won't. We'll get stuck. We'll get stuck in some belief system, some intellectual framework about the way things are. But if we don't try to answer the question, but we use that question as a guide, then it will take us deeper and deeper into our experience. And so that's what I attempted to do during group the other night, and it was really interesting. So we looked at, okay, so what is love? Let's try to answer the question instead of going around the question to look at the processes beneath it. Let's actually try to answer the question, but not from this intellectual place. Let's look to our experience. And so that's what we did. At least that's what I felt like we were doing. It's certainly what I was doing during the conversation. Is I'm looking to my experience of that, and other people looking to their experience of that. And so that question, what is love, for me, and perhaps for others, it was hard to tell, but for me at least, took me to a place of, an interesting place of understanding that I really appreciated, and that has direct practical applications in my life. So let me get into the content of that just a little bit. So at first it was proposed that love is something like connection, generosity, stuff like that. And we pretty quickly got to, well, those kind of things, that's not what love is. That's what love does. Okay, so love acts kindly. That was another one, kindness. Love acts kindly. It acts generously. It connects us to ourselves and others, and so on. But that's not what it is. Okay, so then we looked at, well, what if it is love a feeling? What if it's a feeling? Like a feeling like sadness or hurt, like hurt feelings, or joy, these kind of things. And we pretty quickly got to, it's not a feeling either. Now, of course, there's something that people call love, which is a feeling, which is on the same levels of those other things. And for me, like that's like, to say I love you from that relative place is to say, essentially, I enjoy being with you. I enjoy how I feel when I'm with you. I feel a care for you and for your well-being, stuff like that. That's all good. It's a good place, good place to be. But that's not what love, in the universal sense, and that's kind of what we're looking at in group, is in the universal sense, that's not what love really is. So we kept looking at it, and what we realized was, or at least what I realized was, we can't answer the question. We can't really say what love is. Now, what we ended up saying was stuff like, it's our authentic nature. It's the ground of being, this kind of thing. But that's not really saying anything. That's just basically just naming something that we can't describe. And something that was interesting to me about that is, I was thinking about it afterwards, that when you get to something that you cannot say what it is, then you've reached the foundation of things. So, for example, like if I look at a chair, so what is a chair? So instead of asking what is love, I'm going to ask, what is this chair? Well, I can take it apart. I can take that chair apart. And I can take it apart to a point when it is no longer a chair. I'm looking into it. I take it apart. Well, what is it? And I'll take it apart to find out what it is. And then I'll have a little pile of pieces of wood and maybe some metal screws and stuff, some little metal plates. Now it's no longer a chair. Now it's a little pile of wood with screws and plates. So I have looked into it, and I can describe it. I can describe what the chair is, because it's the assemblance of these things. So then you go a little further. You say, well, okay, what about this wood, the leg of this chair? It's made out of wood. What is that? What is wood? Well, we can take that down too, and wood is made of these certain molecules. And if we break the wood down to that level, you no longer have wood. Now you have molecules, these different molecules you can name. And you can break those down too into atoms. You can break atoms down into electrons and protons and neutrons, and you can break those down into, I can't remember what you call the things that are smaller than those, but you can keep breaking it down. And every time you can break something down, if you can break something down in that way, you know what you have is not essential. It is a construct of essential things, but it's not essential in itself. Love is not like that. You can't, at least this universal aspect of love that we're talking about, you can't break love down like that. It is something that is in it whole and complete in itself. It is fundamental. And so that's kind of what we got to, or at least that's what I got to, is that's what love is. It's the same thing that, I'll use this word life a lot of times, life with a capital L. people use the word God, divinity, spirit. In the Zen tradition, and in Buddhism, I think you could say in general, there's this word, it's translated as suchness. What is the essence of everything? There's this stuff that you can't say what it is because it's so fundamental. It's suchness. It's like that. So that's what we got to. That's what love is, which is kind of saying we don't know what it is, but we have an experience of it. That's the thing that's so kind of magical about this life that we have on earth, I think, is we don't know. We don't know what these ultimate universal things are because we're inside of them. If you're inside of something, you can't know what it is. This is another way of saying what I was saying about the chair. You have to be outside of it to know it. And we can't be outside of it. We can't be outside of love because it's who we are. It's our, in the sense of it's our fundamental essence. The same as life, God. It's just different words for the same thing. We can't know what that is because we're inside of it. And that's, to me, is one of the great sort of like pleasures, like spiritual pleasures of life on this planet as a human being, is that we get to experience it, but we don't necessarily know it. We can't grasp it with our minds because our minds are too small. Another aspect of this that has been really interesting for me, and we talked about this in group too, but I've looked at this a lot since our conversation the other night, is there's this fundamental teaching in Buddhism that says, in the way it's said in the daily recollection, which is the rosary that we say every morning in meditation, form is not different from emptiness. Emptiness is not different from form. Form is not different from emptiness. Emptiness is not different from form. It's pointing to something that we can't get our heads around. At least I can't get my mind around it. I can't explain that rationally, but I can feel the truth in it. That there's the form. So in this case, for me, there's a body. There's a perspective. Like I'm sitting here in the barn right now looking out that way. I'm not having the same perspective that you are having as you're listening. So I'm in an individual form. And yet, what I'm made of, most essentially, is universal. It's beyond form. And they're the same. Those two things are the same. They're not different. So to say, like, love is, I know that love is, I can't really say that because that breaks down the similitude of form and essence. That says I'm outside of it, looking at this other thing that's different from me. It's not like that. Form is not different from emptiness. Emptiness is not different from form. And it's magical and mysterious because I am made of love, to use that word that I'm talking about here. I'm made of love. It's who I truly am. It goes beyond form, and yet it is informed. It is made into this being with this body in this physical world. And so because of that, I can take that love and I can, as a subject and object, I can apply it. And so I was using in the group the other night, I was using the image of a flashlight. So you take a flashlight and you shine a flashlight on something, you've illuminated something, but that doesn't change the essence of the flashlight, of the light. The light is not affected by the fact that it's illuminated on something else. In itself, it is unchanged. And yet you can take the flashlight and you can point it at something, you can illuminate something, and then you can remove it from that and point it at something else and illuminate that. That's how love is, too. So in this mysterious way, it is absolutely unified and cannot be divided. And at the same time, can be divided into subject-object. And I can be the subject of love and can point that love at something and love it as an object. So I can love you. I can love life. I can love this place where I live. I can love the snow and the way the snow is coming down. It's absolutely amazing and mysterious that that's so. That I get to have the experience of something universal in this particular form. There's this old, as you've probably heard of this, there's this old Hindu idea, that God was going around one day and was just being God, and God was all one. Everything was God. And God got bored. And so God decided to break itself into 10,000 pieces or 100,000 pieces. And now God is playing a game of hide and seek. And God is broken down into all these pieces, trying to see itself. And that's what we are. We are God made manifest. We can look, we can see God because we are God. And yet we are also these individual beings at the same time. It's kind of like that. So how is this, seems to me like what always has to come down to, how is this helpful? How is this actually practical? Because if it's not practical, it's fun, but to think about these things, but it has to be practical too. So to me, in order for something to be practical, and I'm going to say something and then qualify it, what I want to say is it has to be something we can practice. But that's tricky itself to say to something that I can practice, because in this universal place, there is no subject object. There is no I to practice. On a relative level, there is. There is me, and there's my life, and there's these things I'm aware of, and I can practice those things. So on the negative side, the side of the negative way, I can say I can practice this. And the way I practice this is having the realization that I am love, just to say it really simply. I can look to see what is not that. I can watch myself act in unloving ways. Or to say it more in kind of along the lines of the way I'm talking about this, I can notice when I'm not myself. Because to say love is my authentic nature is to say that's who I am. And so, just as an aside, that's an interesting way to think about it. To say I love you is, in this universal way, is to say I am my true self with you. And if you love me, you are your true self with me. And then if that love is there, we bridge this difference, and we have a universal connection with each other. In a way, it gets to a point where there is no each other. We are one. We are in love. We are in the same space. We are in the same essence of love together. So anyway, it's just kind of an aside. But so I can practice being this that I am, this love that I authentically am, by letting go of everything that's not that. And I can watch myself not doing that. I can watch myself being in conditioned mind, assuming things, assuming an I that I am, assuming, the importance of my wants and needs, and how I have to meet those wants and needs in order to be happy in this life, and all these kind of things that we do as conditioned beings. I can watch that happen and let that go. And that's legit. That's practical, helpful, and that's what that's kind of work I've been doing these past 2.5 decades. And then on the other side, and on the side of the direct path, that's where it seems to me where we can't say I can practice that. In that place, because that requires a somebody to practice and a somebody making choices. And in that area, in that universal area, it doesn't feel like that applies. There isn't that. And so language fails right there. I think the closest we could say is something like, be love. Or even that's too much, because that implies, because there's a verb there, that implies a subject to that verb. You could say love. But even that kind of has the same thing. So it's the thing that we can't talk about. The closest I think we can get to is, there is a realization that I am love. There is no me other than this thing, love. This fundamental suchness of everything. And I can be that. Not with an effort. Not by choosing to be it, by just being it. It's the direct way. So there's something to play around with for you. Thanks for listening. Take care. Be well. And I'll talk with you again soon.